Hi, this is Ushio, and today we're going to do quite a long video. I think it's going to be kind of like a Christmas shopping buyer's guide for people who are struggling to think of ideas on what to get their loved ones for Christmas. There's a lot to get through. I can't just give a straight top 10 saying everyone's going to enjoy these 10 manga, so we're going to kind of theme it. And if you want to skip to the section that you're kind of interested in, I'm going to leave a list here, and you can kind of skip to the section you want, and this will give you a bit of a preview on what's coming soon. So I know what you're thinking, dude, why are you doing this now? It's not even December yet. But think about it another way. There's only one more payday before Christmas, and there's been a bit of like a worldwide shortage on a lot of things, including manga. So there's a lot of manga shortages right now, and it's going to be easier if you can get something early. Or what's your plan B going to be if the thing you really want to get isn't in stock? And that's kind of where I'm going to approach some of these recommendations from. So these recommendations are going to be for everyone to consider. So if you're like a super manga fan buying for another manga fan, that's going to be fine. If you're like a parent and you don't know what your kids are into, I can help you out. It's no problem. We're going to go through this and I'm going to describe as best as I can that you can make the best decision that you want to support their hobby and the things that they might want to read. And also, if Christmas isn't really your thing and you're not going to celebrate it, there might be a birthday coming up soon, or you might just want to get a gift for yourself or for a friend, or this is just a general recommendations video as well. It's not specifically for Christmas, but this is just an excuse for me to put on a stupid costume on top of a stupid costume, and from this point we can kind of start to check things out. So first up, let us check out manga that might be suitable for the youngest of audiences. We're talking like pre-teens age. Honestly, probably one of the most difficult kind of audiences to cater for, because a lot of manga, it looks kind of like regular and innocent, and when you start reading it, it gets a little bit more involved. So the safest stuff that you can probably get, it's limited choices. Yeah, I've made these recommendations before. I've got like the Pokemon manga here, and Pokemon Adventures, they're nice 3-in-1 volumes, so you get quite a lot of content for your money. So it's like a bit of a nice hearty gift kind of thing. They might be a little bit unfamiliar if it's for a younger person. They might not know the earliest Pokemon. They might not know their Charizard or their Squirtles. They might be familiar with a lot more of the later, more recent stuff. Tough. Pokemon's Pokemon, and it's a nice, safe area to kind of work in if you're trying to introduce somebody to manga, or they're super interested in like their video games and stuff, but you don't want to give them something that you don't know what they're going to react to. So this is a fairly safe approach. There's a lot of Nintendo themed manga out there. There's like an Animal Crossing one, there's a Splatoon one, there's a Kirby one, there's a Mario one. It's really weird and the humor's a bit all over the place, but yeah, so that's your easy pick if you're getting something for quite a young person. Also, if video games aren't quite your thing, hang on, I've got massive stacks of books everywhere, and where's a good place to put once I've spoken about that? I'll just dump it on the floor. It's fine. Yeah, so if video games aren't quite the right thing you're after, I've got Little Leo, and that's very shiny book, and it's cute, and it's about a cat, and it can either talk and it can hang out with like kids and stuff like this. I haven't read it. So you're having a bit of a mad dash trying to get your Christmas presents. I'm having a bit of a mad dash grabbing all these books. And so some of these recommendations are going to be because I've read them. Some of them are going to be based on reputation of the author. Some of them are going to be recommendations from friends. So this is really cute. It's really safe. It's always good to pay attention to the back. It's got like an all age recommendation on the back. And honestly, there's quite a bit of a fad at the minute for cat themed manga. You can really basically grab anything and you're guaranteed to get something fairly safe. I'm just trying to dig out some other cat manga I have got to hand, which, not that one. I mean, I'm a cat barista. These are all things that I've had arrive recently and I haven't had time to read, but you can't go wrong with a cat manga. What one was that called? Masterful Cat is depressed again today. And classic thing we have got, what's Michael? And there are more. I could grab more easily, but cat manga is generally a safe place to go. Of all the ones I've read, they're always safe and they're always an easy read if they like animals or cats in particular, obviously. sometimes the humour can be a bit wry and it might go over the head a little bit of like a younger person, but they'll grow into it and they can still appreciate it in future years. It's not going to be something that's going to upset or offend. And if you really don't like cats, I don't know, Gentleman Penguin maybe. But we'll move on. We'll go a little bit older now. We'll go for like shonen manga. Shonen manga is typically aimed at boys. If you're going to go in hard demographics, it's aimed at like young boys. And irrespective of that, anyone can read them, but there's basically, it's just going to be like an action show. It's going to be like an action story and people fighting each other. I'm going to be slightly more particular when I start recommending stuff from here on out. So I'm going to go on the assumption that the person you're buying this manga for, they're going to be quite hardcore. They're going to know exactly what they're talking about, and they're going to be able to easily reel off all of the popular series off the bat. So I'm gonna recommend more of like the next best thing, something that might take them by surprise, something they might have heard about but not have had an opportunity to read themselves. So it's going to be the worst thing if you show up on Christmas Day, you've got them a present and they open it and it's like, oh, I've already got this. That's the worst. That's not what you want at all. So I'm going to try and recommend stuff that's slightly sidestepping the obvious picks. So with shonen manga, well, the obvious pick, the most popular thing going right now, and if you see it in the shop, just grab it, it's Chainsaw Man. It does exactly what it says on the tin kind of thing. You can judge a book by its cover. It is about a man who is a living chainsaw, and he kind of rips and tears his way through lots of stuff. It's very juvenile sense of humour, nice and spatty. It kind of, the stupid humour offsets the real violence that's in there. And again, with the current situation, with there being a lot of manga shortages right now, this is very hard to find. So if you do see it in the shop, just grab it. And even if they do already have it, you can probably give it to another friend and really, really impress them. So yeah, if you show up on Christmas Day with Volume 1, you're really gonna impress someone. But that's my obvious pick. That's not the pick that I'm going to go for now. The manga I'm going to suggest basically for like a shonen reader, someone who wants a bit of action or something like that. We've got Akira Toriyama's Manga Theatre. I haven't read this yet. I haven't got my copy yet. It's just come out. So this is kind of like a good chance that the person you're buying for hasn't already got this because it only came out this month. It's very, very new. Akira Toriyama is most famous for like Dragon Ball, also Dragon Quest video games, Dr. Slump. Very, very famous, popular artist. And the Manga Theatre is essentially some short stories put together. But any person who's into like Dragon Ball or their standard action manga, something like this, it's got a bit of like, this is their earlier work and this is how they developed into what they made and got super famous from. It's quite an interesting book, and it's a comedy, really. It looks really fun. So it's an easy recommendation because there's a high chance that that person won't already have it. Another thing you can do, if you're not quite sure, is kind of, if you've got access to like their room, not that I condone an invasion of privacy or anything like this, but when they're out of the house, make sure they're gone, sneak into the room, have a look at their shelves, take a couple of photos of their shelves, and then kind of like retreat and then have a little look. If they've got a lot of a series called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, lots and lots of hardbacks, all looking the same, it'll all stand out, you'll definitely notice it. The next step from that, I would say, is check out Fist of the North Star. It's really over the top, very violent, but it's so violent you can't take it seriously. It's really, really cool. It's just people shouting off their special moves, bad guys being bad guys, good guys being good guys. It's very simple in what it's trying to do. The artwork is really nice, and you just know that these guys are so bad that they deserve the grisly fates that are coming to them. And it's just kind of easy to just enjoy it, go with the flow, and don't think too much about it. This is fairly new, and most of the recommendations, yeah, again, I'm just going to recommend stuff that is quite recent to lower the chances that they might already have this stuff. So there's only 2 volumes of this out at the minute. They're nice deluxe hardbacks. They got some colour pages in there as well, and it's just an easy thing to recommend. I'm going to recommend one more thing, and that's Mashal. I've only been reading it digitally lately, but it's kind of like the sum of its parts. So if someone's got a lot of like One Punch Man on their shelf, Mashal has a bit of that in there. If someone's got a lot of like Black Clover on their shelf, Mashal has a bit of that in there. If they got Harry Potter on their shelves, Mashal has a bit of that in there. It's basically about a guy who lives in a magical world, and he's the only person in that world who doesn't possess magical powers, but he does have muscles, and he can fight people on a level without having to use magic. And these people want to deny his existence because he doesn't have their abilities, but because he's so powerful, he can kind of fight back. But it's very stupid. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It's basically a comedy, but when it chooses to crank up the action, it can really go for it. But yeah, it's just an easy recommendation, and there's only about 3 volumes at the minute so far, so it's quite early days. There's no point in recommending you pick up something that's about 30 volumes long if you just want to get them a one-off gift, just to start off their collection. I mean, if you're rich, you can just get the Demon Slayer box set and just be done with it. But yeah, we're going to go for like 1 volume at a time, little intimate gifts that you can just pass to someone, and it has a bit of meaning. Okay, next up, from the Shonen is the Shojo. It's the other side of the coin. So Shonen is a male demographic, Shojo female demographic. Doesn't really mean too much. Anyone can read anything. But with Shojo stuff, there's a different kind of expectation, like romances as opposed to like raw action with not a lot of thinking going on. So Shojo has a little bit more thinking to it. I don't know, in terms of like recent stuff, I had a bit of a struggle looking through. I read some Shojo, but not an extreme amount. And if I'm trying to look at stuff that's been released within the last 12 months, I had a bit of a struggle. So I had to ask my friends. So you're watching my video looking for recommendations. I ask my friends for recommendations, and it's just a big crisscross, everybody asking each other, and that's kind of how we learn, how we find the best stuff. I would like to recommend something like Rose of Versailles. They look like they're all sold out at the minute until they have a new print run. I would like to recommend Sailor Moon, but there's a new edition of that coming out in the new year. So like in January, February, there will be a new version of Sailor Moon, and that's the one I would like to recommend, but I can't. There are like the super duper size Eternal editions of Sailor Moon. They're not cheap, but it is all out, and to my shame, I haven't read it yet. So let's keep thinking about stuff. I would recommend maybe checking out, like on my channel over the years, I'm a little bit slow and I don't update as much as I should, but I have got some reviews on there that you might like, and one I did review a little while ago was A Sign of Affection, which is basically about a girl who's hard of hearing. She's deaf and she can only communicate through like writing it down or sign language. She comes in contact with a guy who's like a linguist and that. He likes languages, but he starts to learn the language and they start to interact and develop a relationship. It's quite a nice, it's not too deep, it's not too like angsty or dramatic, but it's quite a nice gentle romance. It's fairly new, only 3 volumes are out so far. Volume 4 I think comes out in January. So I did do a video, so I won't dwell on this one too much. But it's a nice little thing if you want to get someone a bit more of like a gentle romance as opposed to a cave your scudding kind of action. So we like a bit of variety. So I always maintain that not every manga is for every reader. There's no point recommending something that's really violent to someone who doesn't care for that kind of content. If that person wants like a gentle romance, then that's what they deserve. So have a quick look at the shelves. If it doesn't look like it's dripping with blood, then maybe something like this might be a bit more appropriate. The other thing I'm recommending is quite a new thing, and I only arrived yesterday in the mail for me, so I've not read it yet. I've got Cheeky Brat, and this is quite a long shoujo series that started quite a while ago in a magazine called Hana to Yume. So while I haven't read this one, I still want to recommend it because I'm familiar with the magazine that this was published in Japan, and I like a lot of the other series in that magazine. It runs Yona of the Dawn, Skip Beat, Ore-sama Teacher, that finished recently, but there's quite a procession of series from that magazine that I'm really a big fan of personally. So I trust in their editorial skill that they can produce more work like this. This has been running for several years. It's up to about volume 20, but volume 1 just came out, so this is a very good starting point to jump on with a nice new in-depth manga. I generally find that with a lot of the shoujo manga, I like the longer series because you get to see these characters fully develop and they kind of switch around and grow up as time goes on. But that's basically it for shoujo manga. It's kind of hard. If you're like in a bookshop, I would look at the spines. If you see like, this is a bad example, where are we? I haven't got one to hand, but if you see a manga and it's got like the Shojo Beat logo on the spine, that's a good indication that you're in the right territory if you want this kind of story. But I would also, as always, check for the age description. I find that if it's teen rated, it's for like a younger audience. Teen plus is like for a general audience. And a mature is, it's not like mature as in inappropriate, but it's like if you got like a romance, it will go to a natural conclusion and include that as part of the story. So you can kind of judge based on who you're buying your presents for, or yourself. If you wanna delve into that, I would recommend that. A lot of the other publishers don't really define what is shoujo and what is not. You don't want to buy something that looks like a regular romance, but it's actually like little girls in swimsuits. It's a different kind of vibe, so it's always good to have a quick check and make sure that you're getting the right stuff. That's why I'm recommending this stuff. If you're not familiar, I'm gonna try and lead you as best as I can. So yeah, Cheeky Brat, I think it's gonna be a good one, despite me not having read it. No one's perfect. Okay, so we're moving on from the basic demographics, and we're going to go into like more general genre kind of stuff. You saw the contents list at the start, you know where this is going. So next up is the comedy stuff. A lot of manga integrate comedy into their content anyway, so something like Mashal, for example, you could just argue is a straight parody. Like One Punch Man is basically a parody, but because of the action, it can kind of appeal to different kinds of tastes. So if people want a pure comedy, it will appeal to them. If someone wants just like a pure action, they'll also appeal. But something that's more specifically at comedy, I've got a couple of recommendations here. So I know I said I was only going to recommend super recent stuff. I've got Way of the House Husband, and it's just funny. The guy's a gangster, or ex-gangster, ex-yakuza, and he's turned straight. But he hasn't lost his swagger. He hasn't lost his demeanour of being quite an intimidating and scary guy. So he's just going out shopping, looking for some sugar, looking for the good stuff. But people over here, and when they hear good stuff, they think that he might be after a different kind of item. And it's basically that kind of humour is where it kind of goes along. But the guy's very wholesome, actually. He just looks super scary, like he's going to throw you into the back of a car or something. But it's very funny throughout. It does have the kind of humour, but because of like the references to like his past life, it does have references to that kind of stuff. But overall, it's well-meaning, it's funny, and it's kind of part of the joke. You could argue that it's just a one-trick pony, it's just a one-joke manga the whole way through. There's truth to that, but at the same time, there are enough variances in the other characters that come into it, or the instances where he shows up. Like he'll attend like a yoga class or something like this, or he'll go to like the local council meetings or something like this, and it just maintains its humour. It's just quite a fun character to observe, and how he fits into these like quite everyday mundane social situations, and how he's like super scary guy in the middle of all this. So it's an easy recommendation, and you could basically give it to anybody, and it's a fun thing. It's a fun thing. All right, next up we have got My Dad is the Queen of the VTubers. This is really funny, and I don't know what this is going to do with my green screen, but you'll have to trust me. Maybe I'll if this doesn't work, I'll put up an image or something like this. But basically, it's about, well, it's one of these titles with a very long description of what the contents are going to be, and it's true. So you got a guy who's basically at home with his parents. He kind of walks in on his dad, and the dad's in the middle of a live stream, and his father's avatar is like just like a young woman, and he's kind of putting on the cute accent and trying to make things really cute for all his followers and that kind of thing, much to the disgust of our main character. He's kind of appalled at what he sees, and gradually kind of gets dragged into that world. Then he goes and sees his mother, who's also in secret. They're both doing it in secret, and nobody knows anyone's doing it apart from the son. But his mother's also trying to do it, but her demeanour is very gruff, and she just gets trolled online. And it's really funny. I think there's quite a quality to the translation here, that it conveys the humour and the emotional anguish that our main character goes through having to see his parents go through these tribulations. But it is funny. It's from a fairly new publisher. They haven't printed too many books so far, so it deserves to do well, and it deserves more eyes on it. I had a lot of fun reading it. I think it's a really good one. So next we've got like the LGBT plus kind of manga, and it's something that's really come up in the last 2 or 3 years, I would say, that a lot of publishers are starting to put out titles that really deal with different kinds of characters, their social situations, and obviously how things are perceived in like Japanese manga are different from how they're perceived in like America or the UK where I'm from, or any other country. It's always interesting to see other people's perspectives in this stuff, and that's kind of the appeal. Not only is solace for the people who identify with it, but also people from the outside who can see how another person would perceive a situation and how they can try and tackle it, how they can kind of like move through it and move on positively with it. And I find it's always interesting to pick out. So while I'm not like fully versed in a lot of these kinds of discussions, I can read a manga and I can tell you whether a manga is good or not based on how it reads, how it flows, and how the characters are conveyed. So it's quite easy for me to recommend this one. So this is Even Though We're Adults. It's about two women who come across each other. One woman is married and the other woman is basically on her own and has always gone through relationships with other women. So they meet each other and they kind of have like a bit of a one night stand, like a bit of a fling. And the day after, they kind of think about, oh, is this something I want to pursue? Am I going to get hurt if I go through with this? Obviously, one person married to her husband, she's like, am I serious? Do I want to leave my husband? And she's like in a bit of a dull relationship and she's kind of ready to move on. But does she want to move on in this way? And the other person, she's just like, I've been through so many of these relationships before. Is this just going to hurt me all over again? And as the title implies, all of the characters are grown up. They've all got their jobs. They've all had their high school romances or whatever happened in the past. But they're grown up now. They're adults. And there's the whole idea, like, when you're grown up, you don't just reach your happy ending when you're 25. Life goes on beyond that, and you can still explore new things or learn more about yourself as you go into it. I was able to read it fairly straightforwardly, and I had quite a good time, and I got into the characters. If you're used to reading like regular Shojo and that kind of thing, it kind of fits into that mold quite easily. It's just like good characters in interesting situations. It's quite easy to read. It's easy to recommend. It's just a good manga, and there's nothing more to it. Next up, we have got... This is Boys Run the Riot. So in this one, it's actually a fashion manga about a group of characters who want to build up a brand. So the main character is transgender male. They're currently in a position where they're trying to come out to their loved ones and the friends and the people around them. And their source of expression is through their artwork, so it's quite nice. And he comes into contact with some friends who, when they finally find themselves able to like say, I'm a male, please treat me as male, they open up and they discover that some people will stick with them. And it's quite nice that they kind of run through it together. And it's not just the protagonist. You got like another guy who's got like zero confidence and so-called friends who treat him like dirt. And you just get a group of misfits who kind of find themselves come together circling around this project that they want to do because it's how they can feel that they can belong. They've got something in common that they've made together and they've built together, and it's their fashion project. It's actually quite fun, and they do some pretty ridiculous things. And the more I read it, the more I connected with what they wanted to do. Because like whenever you meet, like, you know, chapter 1 for example, you just see these people the first time. I know nothing about you. I don't know anything about your problems or struggles. But by the end of the first volume, you're just like, all right. And I've read volume 2 as well. And by the volume 2, I'm just like, yeah, I want you guys to succeed. I know I've seen a lot of the shit you've been put through, and it's very good that you can kind of work through that together. I wanna enjoy your victory, and I want to experience that with you. It's a good one. The pages are actually, it reads very well. A lot of manga, they get a bit stodgy, or they just throw in a lot of text, or they like over-explain what's going on. Whereas this one, it kind of sticks very, very short sentences, which sounds like a bad thing to say, but it just means it's very easily conveying what it wants to do. And it's the way it hops between all the characters. Every character has a different approach to the same situation. They all want to make this brand successful of their like, fashion brand. So one guy wants to like do the photos, one guy wants to do the designs, one guy wants to do all the PR, but they're all working together and they're all got their own qualities and they can all support each other. No, it's just a fun thing. It is just quite fun, and as it goes on, yeah, you do learn to love them. It's an easy recommendation, easy to read, not very long, and something a little bit different. Okay, next up is the horror manga, and no fault of his own, but at the minute, when you talk about horror manga, Junji Ito is the only artist that ever seems to come up. He's like very successful to the point that it's kind of, it's not even true, but there's the perception that he's starting to overshadow other horror manga artists, or that maybe the publishers are overemphasizing Ito when they could be showing off other manga artists just as much. It's kind of a difficult thing. I don't really want to get into it too much, but if you go into someone's room and they just got lots and lots of very thick hardback Junji Ito manga, they need to branch out. Not in a negative way against Junji Ito, because a lot of that manga is really good, hugely popular, very successful. But it's kind of nice if you get a gift for someone, but it's in the realm of what they're interested in, but it's not something that they would maybe automatically pick themselves, and it's just like, oh, try this might be just as good. So it's kind of nice, like, to encourage someone to like experiment and check out different stuff. So okay, here we go. Earlier in the year, Mermaid Saga. This is an old edition, by the way, but Mermaid Saga was completed in 2 omnibus volumes, and this is 4. I've got the old paperback version, but the new deluxe versions are quite good. They're basically about people who, there's like a legend, if you eat the flesh of a mermaid, you become immortal, but then sometimes it can turn bad, you know, this kind of thing. And Rumiko Takahashi is the author of this, hugely famous, hugely popular, but primarily known for like their rom-coms, like their comedies, like silly things like this. Occasional monsters every now and then. Mermaid Saga represents kind of like the darkest that she'll go, and I don't think she gets quite enough credit as doing pure horror. And I think it's quite good. It is quite dark. It's pretty horrible, actually, some of it. And in that respect, it's kind of underrated against all of her other romantic comedies that she does do. Personally, I'd quite like to see her do something really dark again, just because it would be fun. But at the minute, she seems to be quite happy to do just regular kind of comedy, kind of spooky, like Inuyasha was followed by Rinne, and there's a new one called Mao. And they're all of a very similar tone. They're all kind of like fun with occasional spooks, not that scary, just a little bit strange and weird. Mermaid Saga is super dark, and this is what I like, and I would recommend it to any kind of horror person. They might be a bit skeptical, but when they read it, I think they'd be quite impressed. And the other manga recommendation in the horror zone isn't out yet. This is kind of like ahead of the curve. This book isn't out yet, but I'll leave a link in the description. So if you want to pre-order it, if it takes your fancy, and hopefully it will come out in time for Christmas. No guarantees. I'm not the person selling the book. But it is City of Pigs. This is Hideshi Hino. And okay, I've got an example here. I've got like Hell Baby, and this is it's really crazy. It's really over the top, really grotesque, really gross. Like, you can't just have like a body. This body needs to be like really covered in maggots, like a couple of limbs missing, eyeballs hanging out. It has to be so grotesque, but it's really done cartoonishly, stylistically. So someone like Junji Ito is quite like I wouldn't say photorealistic, but the proportions are kind of right. They're like human shaped, this kind of thing. These people are like very kind of like, I mean, look at the proportions here. The size of the head compared to the body, it's not realistic. But because it's not realistic, it can go that much further. It is pretty vile, some of the stuff that his other works can do. And they're always out of print. So a lot of these books came out a while ago. They got their following, but not quite enough to be held in print. So they're all really expensive on eBay. But as there's a new one coming out in a couple of months' time, hopefully December, then I think it'll take someone by surprise. They'd be like, what's this? I've never heard of this before. Or if they have heard of it, it's like, oh, you got this straight away. I'm really impressed. So it would be quite a good get, I think. So if you want to see a bunch of, like, I don't know, I'm guessing there's going to be like rotting pigs' carcasses floating in rivers of blood with the ribs sticking out and all kinds of horrible stuff like this, and kind of like enjoying it at the same time. This is what I'm guessing is going to be in this manga, because I've read some of Hideshi Hino's other stuff. It's kind of par for the course. It's really gross, it's really grotesque, and all the more for it. That's why you want to go for it. So that's a recommendation, and I hope it comes out before Christmas. I think it'll be a real surprise. Okay, so hopefully by this point you've snuck into your loved one's bedroom by this point and taken some photos. So this is your point of reference for what manga you might want to get for them. So if their shelf looks like this, it's a very distinctive kind of look with the white and just like the one band of colour with the volume number on it. First things first, I'm very sorry. But yeah, second things second. This person likes BL, boys love. and basically pretty boys doing pretty things with other pretty boys. That's like a very general, safe way to describe what this kind of manga is about. So, okay, so yeah, a lot of this stuff is adult rated, so make sure that the person buying this stuff is definitely over 18, over 21, or whatever age restriction you need for your territory to be able to buy this stuff. And also that you're comfortable and robust enough and secure stuff in yourself that you can buy this for another person without making it weird or without making it slightly inappropriate. So you need to be able to handle this. This is the weird stuff, because if you're gonna show up, where have we? I actually haven't got that many recommendations because everything I've been reading lately of this type is a little bit on the old side. But something a bit more recent, I did do a review on the channel, so feel free to check out the channel elsewhere. Yeah, Dig Fight Island. And what else can you say? It's all in the title. So it's a good conversation starter piece. So if you get that for Christmas, that'll be something that does the rounds around the dinner table. Also, if you can find this, very well done. It will be reprinted for sure, but at the minute, I don't think it's in print. I think they're waiting for a new stock to run through. So yeah, good luck with that. Also, Mad K, it's very strange, and it's about people who are into gross things in a sexual way. I can't describe it any more than that without getting into trouble with YouTube. Combine horror with boys' love. This is what this is. And it contains everything of that you might be thinking about. Alright, we'll move on quickly. So this is quite a regular recommendation now. This is BL Fans Love My Brother. It's about a guy who's a shut-in. He never leaves his house, but he stays at home making fan art and comics of his favourite anime series. But in the doujinshi sense, as in he gets the characters in relationships with other characters from the series and then prints them for other people to enjoy. So it's a comedy, essentially. It is quite funny. It's only one volume long, so it's not like a big commitment. And you follow like his sister, basically. She's the person who's like, why is my brother always shut up at home? He never leaves the house. What is he up to? She opens the door and he's doing all this quite bizarre, strange stuff. And she's like, what on earth have I walked into? And he's just like, help me out. Draw this really weird, strange, explicit thing for me. And she's like, sure. And it just goes from there. The style of humour is kind of self-effacing, and it's kind of like a bit of an in-joke. That people who are into this kind of stuff, they all kind of like look bad on themselves, but that's kind of part of the humour. And this really lays into that kind of appeal of humour. So yeah, it knows that you're being ridiculous and you're into some really strange stuff, but that's part of the fun. Get in there and enjoy that stuff. Anyway, it's a good comedy. It's one volume, no commitment, and yeah, it's a lot safer than a couple of the other ones we just discussed. Okay, we're gonna move on now. Okay, final section of the manga recommendations for Christmas list. We have got stuff for the manga connoisseur. So if you've got someone who you know is into manga, but you look at their shelves and they aren't all regular paperbacks, they're all different sizes. You got thin, tall, fat, hardback, a lot of hardback stuff, and they're all from different publishers. There's not like a uniform set piece. There's a higher chance that they might be a manga connoisseur, because when these things are published, they're always given a bit of a fancy edition. They're just like one-offs, or they're just odd things that don't fit in with a standard manga. Not to separate one from the other. You can read anything at any time, but there's a certain vibe from more like not quite indie, but you'll understand as we get into things. So I guess the obvious thing to recommend would be like number 5, Taiyo Matsumoto. Anything like that from that creator will probably be fine for this person, but I'm sure this person already has that on their shelf. So you got something like this. Yoshiharu Tsuge stuff. They probably already have this on their shelf. Okay, what else have they got on their shelf? Shigeru Mizuki. It's on their shelf already. Okay, we need to go a little bit harder. Oh, and just to make sure, Shotaro Ishinomori, anything by this guy. A few years ago, everyone was talking about Azuma Tezuka, and then people, as they got into that, they started to learn about other creators from that period of time, so like the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the formative stuff of modern manga. This one might have passed them by slightly because it's aimed slightly at younger readers, but it's a nice hardback edition. Some of the backgrounds are really, really good. And it's one of the earlier classic manga artists, and it deserves to be on any shelf. Anyway, on to the recommendations. Now that I've name dropped some stuff, this is all this is. It's just a name drop session. We have got... one is really recent, and the other one isn't out yet. So we're going to go for the one that's really recent, and I haven't got it yet. It's Lupin the Third Greatest Hits. I've got one of the old Tokyo Pop editions here. These are really hard to find. They're highly desired on eBay. This book has got a lot of special stories in it. It's only one volume, so it's not like the Tokyo Pop editions where it has a lot more. But these editions, they're kind of like the replication quality of the artwork. It's a little bit shaky. You can't really see the artwork a lot of the time. It's kind of like faded and stuff. I'm hoping that this new edition is a lot more on point. So Lupin III is essentially like a gentleman thief, but in the manga he's not so much a gentleman. He's a bit more of an edgy boy, and he kind of gets away with a lot more than what he does in the more slightly wholesome anime days. So he was super wholesome, like in the early 80s and that, as Miyazaki made Castle of Cagliostro. But in more recent years, the edge is slightly returning. Not quite as bad as he was in the manga, because it was quite counterculture and quite, yeah, edgy boy. So it might be a bit of an eye-opener seeing how people take the manga and compare it to the anime, because the anime, they've kind of found like a nice, kind of like a rogue quality to him. He's just a bit of a bad boy doing the bad things to bad people, because he's like a thief. He'll just take things with bad people. Whereas in the manga, he's just a bad person himself. a little bit, because it's kind of like the manga's a bit more artistic than how the anime develops over time. So it will be interesting to see what people make of the new version. And as it's just come out, hopefully the person you're buying for hasn't got it yet. And the other thing that Connoisseur might not have yet is Bat Kid, which I haven't got. It isn't out yet. Hopefully it will come out before Christmas. And it is like a 1940s manga about, it's a baseball story. But because it's so old and so early, not many manga from this period of time do make it out in English. And this is not a publisher who has like a super wide distribution. So again, link in the description, have a look and see what you make of it. So, and the person who's involved in like the translation, he does really good essays that fills out the fuller context of how these manga came about and how they can be seen by modern audiences. And that's it really. I think that's basically all of my recommendations. Half of the stuff I'd read, some of the stuff I trust in the people who brought it to be. And oh yeah, I might as well just throw Robo Sapiens came out recently as well. It looks very different, and the publisher 7 Seas, they do a lot of like regular fantasy stuff, and every now and then they'll just bring in something completely left field, and that fills that gap. It came out recently, it's already out, so if everything else I've recommended hasn't actually been published yet, this one has already hit the shelves about a week ago or so. So you can get that one as well. And I hope that that was of use. I've just reeled through all kinds of manga. I hope at least 1 or 2 would be good enough. But then you only need 1 or 2 for a gift. And I hope you have a good Christmas. If I don't make another update before Christmas, there's a very real chance of this. If you're not celebrating it, get yourself some manga anyway and have a good day. This is Usho signing off, which I'm very grateful for because this is quite hot. And yeah, hopefully I will see you next time.